Hey, everybody, this is Stu Smith, and we have a special guest on another To Through and After podcast series with Special Forces guru Doug Keisewetter, who is out of Texas. Is that where you're living now?
I've been in North Carolina for the last
Okay.
14 years, but Texas is definitely the place of my birth and where my heart lives,
I
even if
gotcha.
I can't be there physically.
I gotcha. That's cool. But hey, he may be better known for what he is doing now, which is in the SOFLETE world. So we're going to get to that. But first, as you all realize, the To Through and After series podcast is basically me asking Doug what he did before he was in the military, what he do when he was in the military, and what's he doing afterwards. So let's hear his fantastic story because it involves a really great American mentor.
Stu Smith. So I guess we can start earlier than most people's twos. I was in high school in Houston, and I thought I was going to go. I only looked at two colleges to go to. One was the Naval Academy, and one was Texas A&M University. And I thought I wanted to be, a Marine, and I was pretty convinced that I was going to go to the Corps of Cadets or I was going to go to the Naval Academy. I got
Great
accepted.
options. Great options.
Well, one is a land grant school where we are all shown our degrees on day one, and we are promised that if we complete all of our classes, we will get this sheet of lambskin. And the other is a place where I assume there's a very high attrition rate and rigorous classes that are demanding. I won't say which is which.
Which one gets the...
Yeah, I know. I can hear it. The ring knocking is happening. Unfortunately for you, they both get those.
That's true. They get a big ass ring down there.
That ring is huge, and I have been confused for a Citadel grad, a U.S. Military Academy grad, or a Naval Academy grad on multiple occasions, and I have to tell them none of those things. I'm a son of the great state of Texas.
Now, have you seen the VMI ring? That's
yeah,
a big ass ring.
it
That's the
is.
Super Bowl ring of colleges.
So essentially, while I was in high school, I showed up for this thing, which was a summer preparatory semester course. I don't even know how to adequately express it. It felt kind of like a precursor to going to the Naval Academy. Like, you guys run, I don't know how many sessions per summer.
You're talking about summer seminar, right?
Yeah, summer seminars. It's 2 weeks, right? Or
it's a week long, but we run 3 cycles of about 800 kids each.
Yeah, and it's a cool program. You have sophomore midshipmen that are overseeing a bunch of high school kids coming to the Naval Academy, and you do a lot of physical training with, hilariously at the time in '96, it was Stu Smith, who ran all the runs and was very gregarious and gave a lot of career advice to those of us that may or may not have stood out. I know that at a certain point, when I was watching a bunch of high schoolers crying in the hall, and like what it was like, it may have only been 80 degrees outside, but it was like 110 in the hallway. And we all got pulled out of the hallway, like 5 of us, to talk about our future in your little cubicle office. It was like a dormitory room that had been turned into the, sanctuary to Navy SEAL Stu Smith. Gotcha. And we heard stories about limpet mining third world navies and SEAL delivery vehicles. And this is where I was told by you that I should quit messing around with wanting to become a Marine, and I should focus on the real prize, which was being a Navy SEAL. So 17-year-old me was like I totally blipped over that. I was like, no one would want me to be a SEAL. That's way too, while it sat in the back of my mind, it was not something that I saw as a reality. Flaky 17-year-old me bailed on going to the Naval Academy and went to my fallback school, which was A&M. I failed out of A&M after my junior year because I didn't want to be at college at all. At that time, I wanted to be a welder. Yes, I don't. My life is a series of interesting setbacks that have been self-induced. So I went to the oil field, and I worked in the oil field for about almost 3 years, telling myself that I didn't need college. I was making good money, but also still actively involved in like the Association of Former Students at A&M and explaining why I hadn't graduated at least 3 times a week.
Ooh.
So, yeah, so I went actually, I think I went back to community college to get my grades up to go back to school at night. And that was kind of like the time where I realized, well, school isn't that hard if you want to be there. So I was working, 60 or 70 hours a week in the oil field, also going to night classes.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it was it was a challenge.
Yeah,
It actually wasn't hard. It was just like all my time was that, right?
yeah.
I reapplied to A&M. I got back in. I quit working the oil field, and I went back to college thinking that I would never do manual labor again, that I was going to get a degree and it was going to mean something. And I graduated, and I took a job working for a geological firm in Houston, which was one of the most disillusioning things that had ever happened, because I realized during my interview processes that having a college degree doesn't mean you're going to get a good job, and that I was making twice as much money as a manual oil field laborer as I was making working in an office in Houston.
Wow.
So I called my old boss and I was like, "Hey, do you have anything for me in Midland?" And he was like, "Yeah, man. You know what? Like, I'll give you 70 grand a year and, these benefits." And I think I was making 30 grand a year at this geological firm. And I was like, I walked in my boss's office and was like, "Yo, I'm going to need a pay raise or I'm going to have to leave." And he was like, "Well, how much did you have in mind?" I was like, "Well, I can't stay here for anything less than 60." And he like started laughing at me. He's like, "Nobody's going to give you a job paying that much." And I was like, "Well, then consider this my 2-day notice, because I am going back to Midland and I will see you later." So I left my apartment and just packed up a truck and I moved from Houston to Midland. And I thought, cool, man, I'm going to make this money. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to stay out here forever. Fast forward like a year, and it's like, I'm going to go to law school or I'm going to join the military. And
Now, where's 9/11 in this phase?
I actually was out in the oil fields during 9/11 before I went back to graduate from college. My parents and my sister had gone to see the U.S. Open in New York City, and I had not talked with them. And then when it happened, I wasn't sure. They had extended their vacation in New York City, so I did not know
Wow.
if they were there or not, just because I'm a terrible son. So like I had not been in contact. I was in the middle of I think I was actually in Andrews, Texas at the time. It was like a little oil field that my company was running there. And I had to stand on the roof of a gang truck, like a big 2.5-ton work truck, to get cell phone reception to call and figure out where everybody was. And of course, because it was such a big deal, all the cell phone networks were crashed. So I was on a bag phone, the old, brick phone attached to a bag, and still couldn't get through. But I was listening to it on the news, and it's funny. I don't actually feel like I was that motivated to join because of 9/11. It's not that I am not motivated by a sense of patriotism.
Sure.
But I certainly was motivated to join based on the camaraderie and shared suffering that I had been exposed to at the summer seminar, and then watching others of my friends join the military. So a recruiter convinced me that I could go to law school and be a Green Beret.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
Kind of funny. He was actually my first senior on my first ODA, and I never let him forget that. I was like, "You son of a bitch." So I was going through LSAT prep courses, trying to get into law school. And also I was sitting around on my couch every night watching Discovery Channel stuff and drinking whiskey. And a show called Inside the Green Berets came on. And I was like, that guy Stu Smith told me I should be a Navy SEAL. This job doesn't look any different than being in the oil field, except like I get to carry a gun and hang out in other places. I could do that. So I went down to the airport and I booked a flight to Mississippi, which is where 20th Special Forces Group had 2nd Battalion's headquarters and actually group headquarters as well, for whatever it's worth. Was, I guess, group's in Birmingham, so it was just 2nd Battalion. And I knew a recruiter there, Sev Summers, who is a brother of one of my first instructors. I flew out there. He filled out a bunch of paperwork for me, and I was like, there you go. And I called my parents, and I was like, I just joined the Army as a Green Beret candidate and Special Forces candidate. And my dad was like, well, I'm so glad you finished college, because now you get to be an officer and like you'll get to do the military in the right way. I was like, no. I joined as enlisted guy. And there was like this long pause. They were like, clearly they were thinking, we've raised an idiot. I think it took a few years for them to understand kind of what I was doing and what I was getting into and the significance of it for me. I quickly realized that I could not go to law school and also be a Green Beret. Like probably the second. Mix. Oh, it was bad, man. I showed up for a drill. I hadn't been to basic training or anything. I showed up to, this training detachment in Grenada, Mississippi, which is, for lack of a better explanation, the asshole of the world. And the training detachment was being run by the grumpiest, angriest group of Mac VSOG Vietnam vets. And wow. Oh yeah, dude. I mean, talk about throwback. I mean, there was a wealth of knowledge there, but they were just, I think that their job was to just shit on us. Like, you show up and it's just, you're nothing. You can't talk to me. Don't talk to any of those other guys. Like you sit here and you like feel bad about yourself. You're like, all right, this is weird. And then they started to tell me, because I hadn't been to basic, I wasn't going to actually be allowed to participate in any training. And I had planned on deferring when I was going to leave until I had finished my first semester of law school. And then I realized there was no way that my impatient ADD self could put up with an extended period of time waiting in the wings with a bunch of like grumpy 70-year-olds, 60-year-olds. Just for more of that story, when I graduated the Q course, one of them was still in the unit, and he was absolutely livid that they were not going to let him deploy to Afghanistan with us.
Oh, wow.
Because he was going to hit his mandatory 65-year-old retirement age mid-deployment or whatever. So it was like he had joined at 17 and he had stayed somehow plugged into the special operations community the entire time.
Wow.
Oh, dude. I mean, there's a lot of identity wrapped up in that, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's funny though. We can talk about it. I guess the after part, right? Like sure. When we get there, because I think that one thing that this 17 years of war that we've been in has really helped us see is that self-awareness about our readiness is really important, and that all of us need to recognize what our strengths are and when to hang the spurs up. Like yeah, I am still capable of being operational at 37. But I have definitely had those moments where I'm like, it's not going to last forever. I need to focus on my strengths. I need to start teaching new guys the lessons that I've learned, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely.
And moving on. So I had never worked out in my life. I had manual labor jobs. I felt like I was a pretty fit guy. I quickly realized that I was not that fit, not for the way the military needed me to be.
I will tell you though, real quick, there's some durability and work capacity that gets built in when you do nothing but manual labor jobs.
Well, and mental toughness too, right?
Yeah, you had some foundation in there that was a good foundation to build fitness on.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on a ranch. I worked in the oil field for a lot of years. The idea of being outside, being uncomfortable wasn't new to me, but the idea of like going for a 10-mile run, I was like, what is this? Why would anybody do this?
Right.
Terrible idea.
Energy.
I
could be working.
Well, and I mean, welcome to the military where like the military can ruin anything fun. It's true. Like, skydiving, we ruined it. Diving, we ruined it. Like people are like, "Oh man, you get to do this for your career, like you get to shoot guns for a living." You're like, "Yeah, but don't worry, the Army can run that too." Like,
That's so funny because I have a new standard for diving now. It has to be daylight and warm enough water to where I don't need a wetsuit, and I have 100-foot visibility.
and it sounds awesome. You just made diving fun again.
Exactly. That's my 3 criteria.
I'm
Otherwise,
assuming that
it
you
is not
never had a dive like that in the
no.
Navy. Not a
None of
single one.
those 3 were part of the system.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, and people are like, "Oh, like we did a heavy weapons training range in South Carolina recently. That was actually a lot of fun. It was a 4-day deal. We shot laws, AT4s, 50 cals, 7.62 crew, like a lot of crew serve work. So doing crew drills. After we watched the videos of a certain unnamed, non-existent Tier 1 unit laying down the law on the Russians in Syria,
Sweet.
and most of that was due to them having non-existent crew drills. the Russians, that is. We were like, man, we should probably work on these things. So we did a lot of that. And the range request we put in for the ammo request was generous, especially for a single ODA. And we probably only had 10 guys show up. So we shot enough ammunition during those 4 days that like I did not want to see another round of 50 cal for like a year. I was like,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey man, maybe we should have asked for less ammo.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, and you probably shot up the entire Marine Corps' annual ammo allotment. That's why I said don't join the Marine Corps.
We had a brigade of infantry guys that were training next to us, and our ODA's allotment for heavy weapons training was 4x their brigade's allotment for the exercise. So yeah, we had fun, but
Yes.
also, you know, another point we can talk about is, you know, taking care of yourself, doing that much, exposing yourself to that much overpressure between
you up.
rockets, 50 cals. I mean, like you feel sick, right? Like 4 days of the range, and it's like, I have the flu. No, that's just my insides.
You have
all torn up.
concussion syndrome.
Concussions, yeah. So, I learned a lot about fitness by joining the military. I was a very skinny guy. You know, I had endurance. I was reasonably fast, but I was not strong. I was working strong. I understood how to make angles work. You know, like when I was in the oil field, I was working with a lot of really big guys, and I had to learn what a cheater pipe was. I had to, you know the right wrench and use it to my advantage.
Sure. How heavy were you when you went through SF training?
I weighed 132 pounds when I joined the Army. I weighed 119 pounds when I came out of SEER school. I have pictures, and I literally look like someone who left Auschwitz. It was bad. All my friends made fun of me. I rebounded during the Q course. I think I graduated the Q course at like 170 pounds.
Oh, okay.
And then after my first rotation in Afghanistan, which involved a lot of mountain stuff, I weighed well over 200.
Right.
Stocky 200. My wife said that was fat Doug. I was cultivating mass. She's mean spirited.
Mass phase.
I now, as a healthy fitness focused guy, am about 185.
Nice.
Yeah, much more than that, and I start to get slower, much less than that, and I'm pretty weak. So this is the place to be. I think I was working in Africa in 2016, and I ran a lot. There were no gyms. It was just, hey, I'm just go run 20 miles. And I dropped like 162 there. And my wife said I was hot. I felt like I was dying.
Right.
Look in the mirror, I'm like, why are my hip bones showing? This is too light. I think that every person has a good balance. When I first started to gain weight, like when I first started to gain man weight, because I think I really didn't hit puberty fully until I was in my 20s.
Right.
That a lot of the transition into team life and military stuff Like I was a late bloomer. I mean, I think a lot of us are, but I certainly was. Probably around 25 or 26, I started to be built like an actual man, not like a teenager. And I know that, I was really used to being able to go run 2 miles in 13 minutes or less, no problem. It was like a 0% effort day for me.
Right.
And the first time I got to like 165 pounds, I felt like I was running in a fat suit,
Right.
and just into the wind, no matter what. And suddenly, like an 18-minute 2 mile was not out of the question. And I realized that I didn't just come naturally to me more. Now I needed to work running into my training program. I couldn't just lift weights all the time, hoping to get bigger.
Right.
And, then you adapt, you get back to 13-minute 2 mile or 12-minute as a 165-pound guy, and you get up to 185, and you're like, oh my God, I am slow again. So
it is amazing the difference. I mean, what weight does make a big difference in pull-ups and running.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. I read an article a while back talking about how much of a difference just like boot weight makes. It's like for every pound of weight that are on your feet, it's worth 5 pounds on your back, something along those lines. So basically, lighter shoes has a really appreciable effect on your performance. Likewise, trunk weight has the same. Not only are you needing more oxygen to fuel muscle, but also you're having to carry that extra weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, one of my coworkers here, and one of my teammates in Special Forces, and my best friend for like 20 years, is always mad at me because Brian follows the rules. Like, I am a habitual line stepper. So a very key difference between us is on long ruck marches during selection. First thing that I would do is I'd take off at a run. I would make it about 400 meters out of sight of the cadre, and I would take both my 2-quart canteens out and I would dump them. That's like 8 pounds of weight that I didn't want to carry. And I knew that it was a supported ruck, and that if I could make it, if I could make it 8 miles, there was going to be a water station. So I could fill up my 1 quarts. And I also knew that I had no business drinking more than 2 quarts of water on any given ruck. Now, if it was a really long ruck and there wasn't a support station, I was going to be dry for a while. And we weren't supposed to drain our canteens. That was against the rules. But I was willing to take that 8-pound hit and a possible integrity violation. Brian, to this day, anytime we talk about this stuff, is like, you're a cheater, and that's dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, okay, man. Also, like, yeah, like, that's just, it's amazing what that 8 pounds does, right?
It makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. So, they always say when we were in the course, it was always, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, which as a senior NCO now, I feel like that guides people down the wrong road, or at least sends the wrong message. So we now say adapt, improvise, adapt, and overcome, which is a positive way of saying if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Right.
But we leave the word cheating out so that we can pretend to have a moral high ground.
Right. We say, bullshit. Don't lie, cheat, or steal, but you can bullshit, gouge, and recon.
It's like, I mean, I think it's ironic that we look at the Spartans as like, many of our special operations community look at the Spartans as an example of who to be like. And one of their core things is for the kids is like, we don't feed you enough to survive. We encourage you to steal, but if we catch you stealing, we are going to discipline you within an inch of your life. And you're like, man, this is a really abusive way to raise kids.
Yeah, that is. Plus, the whole man love thing kind of throws me off with the whole thing. So.
Oh man, I'm going to tell a story about that. Are you familiar with Special Forces legend Jim Gant?
I have heard. Yes, I have heard.
He wrote the white paper. Yeah. Well, it's not even really fair to call it a white paper. He wrote a paper that he circulated through his own private channels called "One Tribe at a Time." I actually personally like Major Gant. I think he's a very interesting person. He was the commander of my Robin Sage class, like the overall commander. I think there's 2 majors that run that program, and I think he was like the North lane commander and there was a south lane commander.
Gotcha.
And he essentially, you need someone more experienced kind of mentoring the officers as they come through our culminating exercise in special forces.
Right.
He was there to do that. And you know, guys that had a lot of experience in the military would listen to him talk and would be like, man, fuck this dude. Like they would be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. And then all of us young guys with stars in our eyes would listen to him talk about stuff, like super romantic, very into like the idea of, like, he would talk to us a lot about, like, he was a Buddhist, and he believed that his continuation of energy was that of many, many eons of warrior spirit combined into who he was today. You know,
Okay.
if you read Stephen Pressfield's book, the one that I don't even remember what it's called. The one where he was, it was like a future war where mercenary armies owned the Middle East and controlled all the oil. I can't remember what it's called now. Jim helped Stephen Pressfield write that. So a lot of like the ideology, the warrior ethos stuff was very Jim Gant driven.
Okay.
We were sitting in our planning bay and we were all like dutifully working. They told us, yeah, the commander's coming in. Everybody, you know, make sure you put on your best face. Well, we already have our best face on. So I'm just going to keep doing me. And we're working and, you know, he comes in, he peruses all of our work and he doesn't say anything. He just wanders around the room and he stands by the door and he looks at all of us and he's like, men, sometimes when I come in here and see you guys working like this, it makes me wish that we could go back to the old times when groups of warriors like us could come together and plan a mission, go out and execute it successfully, and come back to a room just like this and bang each other. and I'm not going to lie, like everyone, like I've never been in a room where more dudes, like it was just the air got sucked out of the room, you know? Like, he did not follow that statement up with any clarification whatsoever.
No laughter, no joke.
He turned around and he left. He just walked out of the room, and every one of us, like, we were looking at each other like, what just happened? Is he serious? Isn't it like a real thing? And our team leaders were like, no, he didn't mean that. He was just joking. And now, in retrospect, like, I'm not sure what he meant. But I do think that it definitely set the bar for like, well, we don't want to be Spartans. You know, like after that, all Spartan imagery, like I quit using anything. I was like, man, none of that. Not for us.
That's a good one. So when you were a young kid and you were getting ready for SF training, you know, what was your go-to training method to get you Army ready?
So I believe there was a variety of flawed training methods available. When I came through, there was not a unit specified like training plan like there is now. The unit or selection specific training plans I've seen that are sent out by the units are, I believe they are very heavy on loaded eccentric work, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that the idea in the military community that to be good at something, one must overload yourself with that particular task is flawed.
Okay.
So I will say I followed a program called How to Get Selected by a Special Forces officer, Joe Martin. I believe he's a colonel now.
Right.
I don't know where he is exactly. I haven't kept up with him, but I think the book was really good. I think that he had some really good suggestions. I never would have picked up a Tony Robbins book in 1,000 years. But he suggested that is on his reading list. And I do think that there were some very interesting things that I got out of reading Tony Robbins' books. I also think that his program to get selected was very low on work intensity and volume, which I actually think was good, especially in a world full of overtraining.
Right.
I think most selection programs have they take for granted that they're dealing with someone who already has a really large capacity, and that them wanting to become special operations means that they have to be able to do way more. Most of the programs aren't built around what I view to be the standard. So if, for instance, the Army or the Army Special Operations Command looks at Special Forces candidates and expects them, I think the most important thing we're looking for, it's the whole man, obviously, but consistency in physical events, right, is very important. So if the standard is 15-minute miles under a 55-pound or 45-pound dry pack, which is a 55-pound wet pack, and the standard is, somewhere between a 6:30 and an 8-minute mile, kind of indefinitely. I mean, with a 10-mile max, generally.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then good performance on a team, which, is a very arbitrary thing.
Right. You got to be a good team player. What's that mean? Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's you really and truthfully, you need to be a good individual capable of subverting yourself for the sake of the team.
Yeah.
But, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a good team player. I think a lot of soft guys are bad team players. They just know that when the mission is more important than self, they can say, hey, I'm not going to do this selfish thing. I'm going to do what is best for the team. It doesn't necessarily mean that you guys would make a really good team. It just, it means that you can put the mission first.
Right. And whether that mission is a log on 6 people's shoulders or it's an actual mission
the
into
sense
something else.
Obligation to carry your share is important. And I think that if those are the standards, then expecting a candidate or someone who's training to be a candidate to meet those standards on day one is very foolish. I think that a lot of special operations prep programs are built on that premise that you're showing up and you can do the Army minimum. And you're going, no, man, like you should send people on terrain walks. It's the crawl, walk, run thing, right? Like you should just go for a walk at a what you view to be a fast pace. Walk 5 miles. Keep track of how long it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you walk a 15-minute mile without weight on your back? Was it faster? Was it slower? Don't worry. This is just, we're just evaluating you. And then you should ramp it up. I also feel that at the time I came through, the idea of periodization was lost to all trainers.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
We all thought we were on this linear plane, this uphill, like the more we work, the better we get without a break. If you hit a wall, it's because you're weak mentally and you should push through that and you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And now we've kind of, as an exercise community as a whole, really explored the idea that no one gets better that way, that you should have a work rest cycle, just like any team event. So, I mean, now like at SOFLETE, and I'm assuming you do this as well, where we have like a meso cycle. So
Yeah.
You have a macro program that's for us typically 12 weeks. And then you have mesocycles that are 4 weeks. And within that mesocycle, there's a 3-week work cycle and a 1-week deload. Yeah. So you're ascending during your 3 weeks of work. And then you're not really plateauing. You're kind of stepping down and plateauing for a week, allowing your body to recover. And then you'll kind of take a little hop and you'll start climbing again and, hit your next mesocycle. I don't think that a lot of people are really thinking like that in terms of getting selected. I know that I can't speak to buds, but for us, we have a certain number of events that are measured events during the length of selection. And those events are mixed up and thrown at people at different times. But those are the same. They are the events that are being evaluated. So if you're going to go to selection, you need to be good at a long and a short distance, unknown distance run. You need to be good at a long and a short unknown distance ruck. You need to be able to lift heavy objects over your head. You need to have good grip strength. You need to be able to pass a PT test. I mean, the PT test is a garbage metric.
Sure.
But if you can't pass it, you're going to be shown the door rapidly.
Right. But, if you take a look at all the elements of fitness, I mean, the PT test is muscle stamina and endurance. to a level. I mean, to a degree.
Yeah.
To a degree.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
in a super limited capacity,
yeah.
in a super limited window. I think that to me, I don't think it would matter what the PT test was that was administered at a selection event. Game day jitters are going to make it a challenge for everybody anyway.
Yeah.
It still amazes me. So like I'm a reasonably self-aware person now in my 30s. My wife has hammered into my head a lot. A lot of failure has hammered in my head a lot of trial and error that, hey man, I am not the best at anything. I oftentimes, am my own worst enemy. And I'm okay with the idea that I don't know the right answer all the time and I won't do the right thing. I'm okay with knowing that is going to result in failure a lot. But that if I keep picking myself up and I keep trying
and learning,
I'm going to eventually see success in some capacity, right? I think that it's very interesting to me within the special operations world that we put game day pressure on guys every day, especially during selection events. So you can take guys who are really high functioning individuals in their lives in general, bring them to a special forces selection or, Delta Force selection. I mean, I think that's an even better example just because you're bringing guys who are at the top of their game already. And those dudes who would kill a PT test anywhere else, they can't perform at a selection event because they've got a huge rush of hormones and cortisol, and their body just cannot perform. So you're thinking one of the most important things about having a good fitness level is that you don't worry as much. Like if you know that you're scoring above the standard on your PT test every time you take it, you don't stress out as much. The cortisol levels are more normal. You can show up for a test when it matters and have a reasonable degree of confidence that you're going to do well at it. So I think that's the value.
And instead of anxiety, it's excitement.
Yeah, well, or you just even a lack of any feeling, right? Like I think
even better. Yeah, if you can go into it flatline, that's really good. Yeah,
and I think that's where we need to be trying to. We need to. I try to tell guys that where it's like, hey man, I get that this is going to be stressful for you. We don't have to take PT tests that often in special forces, but I guarantee you when you go to your senior leaders course, you have to take one because the Army requires it and they require it be recorded. And I am always surprised at how many really fit dudes almost bolo that because they know it matters. And if they fail, they could lose their entire career. So like, hey, look, man, you don't do this regularly, so before you go to SLC, just take a couple PT tests. It's not hard to run 2 miles. It's not hard
put it into your training program.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I always, the SEALs side of it, we always have to swim a 500-yard swim. Then
which is hard.
pull up, then do pull-up, push-up, sit-ups in a mile and a half, right? So that's the SEAL candidate phase. And it doesn't matter what swim workout that we do, you will always warm up with a 500-yard swim because I want people going into that fitness test when they take it and they can actually say, this is my warm-up.
Yep.
This is my warm-up. So it's a mental game thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard. I think it's hard to get in guys' heads. I think in a lot of ways, I look back now and I think of all the things that happened at selection. And I'm sure you think about buds this way. I am sure I've never been to buds, but Hell Week sounds pretty miserable. But it's a stress-inducing time where they want you to, they want to take away all your regular defense mechanisms. They want to make you feel, powerless essentially and see how you react to that.
Sure.
I think that it's funny as people who have experience, like old, crusty, gray-haired Doug and Stu would not have a problem getting selected in those lanes. Again, A, we know what's going on behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
B, like we know what they're looking for.
Right.
And C, we don't get stressed out about things the way we used to.
That is true.
Like for me, so in line with my history of failure,
It's not failure, it's learning. You
That
don't
is,
win, you don't win or lose, you win and learn.
sometimes it is failure. um, I, I, I had a very rocky time through the Q course, the Special Forces Qualification course. I had a huge mouth. I had a big personality, and neither of those things go well with cadre, like
Sure.
instructor. And so I was always starting behind an 8 ball that I put on myself that I didn't know. You know, I'm like, oh no, man, if I do well, these guys will have nothing on me. Yeah, I'm good. And you don't have to open people up that much before, one mistake that anyone else would get forgiven for, they're like, oh man, that's that dickhead. Let's get him. And you're like, I know, because I was an instructor for 3 years and I saw it. I'm like, man, we don't like that guy. I went to bat for those guys all the time because I'm like, man, that's a good dude. He's going to learn. But I think what's funny is that I know the setbacks leave you in a more comfortable place. I opened myself up to a lot of criticism when I was coming through the Special Forces Engineering course. And because of that, I was kicked out of the Q course for a year, which was the best learning experience I could ever had. It forced me to figure out what I wanted. It took me a year of, like, I had to build my own syllabus of what I was going to do for a year to make myself look attractive for the regiment to want me to come back and finish. So like I went and I studied Arabic for 8 months in Morocco, and I concurrently worked on a master's degree in construction management because I wanted to be a special forces engineer and I wanted to have those skill sets, right?
Nice.
No, I mean, it was great for me. It was a really good growing experience. I came back from that more confident and hubristic than I have ever been when I was brought back. And what really was humbling for me was that I was trying to be humble, and I said, I don't need to do the 18 Charlie course again. I need to go straight to Robin Sage, but I'm going to pretend and I'm going to ask to audit some classes in the Charlie course so I don't forget those things that I know I'm going to be evaluated in during our culminative exercise, which of course, I mean, there's no exceptions made. I was reinstated day one at the 18 Charlie course. And I thought, I know all this. I had a 96 average the first time I came through. Like, it was stressful for me. I wanted to pass, but it was amazing how much more I learned the second time through. When I knew I was going to pass, I was actually getting worse grades than the first time I went through, but I was learning so much more. I was cementing a lot of things in. I wasn't stressed about tests. Like, it used to be that I would panic. Like, oh my God, if I don't pass this, then my whole career is trash. And then I'm going through going, no, man, I know this stuff. Like, I don't need to stress about it. Like, right. I can actually learn the nuances of the subjects, like about explosives emplacement, because I don't have the mental bandwidth of stress just crowding my brain. And I think that that's the biggest barrier for most guys coming through these courses, is that they're capable of completing the work. They're capable of performing, but they just stress themselves into a place where they're paralyzed.
That's a really good point. Now, what are some mitigating techniques that you would have to do that, other than just like coming in a little bit more confident with yourself?
Experience is the best teacher, right?
Yeah,
So
I would agree. Yeah.
I think that you can't say that to a guy coming through the course, though, because they have no experience. And the only experience that they're going to get comes from screwing up. And if they screw up too much, then they're out. So it's like, it's not a helpful thing to say that. Personally, I think that the best thing you can do is maximize your mental bandwidth by dedicating time to focused meditation. I think that, like, breathing drills first thing in the morning, breathing drills before you go to sleep, even in the field, are going to help you. You're going to get better rest, you're going to be more focused, and you'll be less stressed. I think that stress creeps up on us. I think that we feel like we manage it very well. I'll make an analogy. It's certainly something that I see more in my personal life than professionally, but I think that we are all vessels. We've talked about this, and I've talked about it recently quite a bit, where, some of us are shot glasses. Some of us are 55-gallon drums. We had the USASOC psych come in. He was actually formerly the MARSOC psych. And we were talking about this like levels of stress thing. And, we see some people that have a very, very low stress input and they
Sure.
can't handle it. The glass overflows. It's messy.
Right.
We have some of us that are just, we're putting shot glasses of stress in a 55-gallon drum, and we think, I can handle stress forever. But there's still a finite number of 1-ounce shots that can go into a 55-gallon drum. And eventually you're going to hit a stressor that just causes your 55-gallon drum to overflow. And being mindful of that, being able to release pressure and focus on what matters is kind of one of the maintenance skills that you need to develop as a special operations guy.
Yeah.
Because I know it seems like we're born to do what we do in a lot of ways because of deficiencies we have. Like,
Sure.
because a lot of us have ADD, because a lot of us are
Hyper competitive.
Yeah, and capable of hyper focus, but also focusing on a variety of things individually all at once. I think that those things seem very helpful. We seem like we can handle everything, but we're not immune to the requirement of mental bandwidth. Like, every one of us has a limited amount of that. And if you're occupying your mental bandwidth with a bunch of shit that doesn't matter, then you have way less bandwidth to deal with the things that do matter.
Yeah. You said something real important too. I want to share with everybody that, as special operators, we are all trained to have a certain amount of really keen situational awareness, right? So externally, we're tracking what's going on around us, 9 times out of 10, no matter where we are, whether we're with our family somewhere in a restaurant or we're, out in the middle of the desert, right? So it just doesn't matter. But I think where we fail and a lot of times is learning how to do that internally, right? Having some internal awareness of, okay, why is my heart rate going up so much right now? Why am I all kind of getting jittery? Why am I pissed off all of a sudden?
My wife and I just, like, we've had a lot of troubles recently, and I went to the doctor. Like, my levels of stress, I was definitely at the max of my 55-gallon drum, right? And I went to the doctor, and my blood pressure was like, I can't even remember. It was something ridiculous. It was like 170 over 105 or something. And, they're like, oh, get out the EKG. And I'm like, no, I feel okay. I came in because I have I feel like there's a brick in the pit of my stomach, and I know it's stress related, but they're like, no, you might be having a heart attack. And you're like, what? And then they're like, no, it was just a panic attack. And I'm like, well, I've been having these rolling for like 2 days. And they were like freaking out on me. And I'm like, no, man, but you got to be able to sit back and say, hey, the brick in the pit of my stomach is something that I need to address. I have to unwind from this. And I think that this is like a culmination. It wasn't just my relationship stress. There's a lot of other stress that I have allowed to build up that I hold on to. And I think that recognizing those things and addressing them, like you said, the internal situational awareness is really hard. I mean, I just read a piece from the New York Times yesterday about how psychiatrists are now starting to see anger as I'd say anger is definitely one of the aspects of being depressed, but it's not in the DSM-4. It is not one of the indicators that someone is depressed, but they're starting to recognize that anger is a manifestation of depression, especially in men. Yeah. And so if you feel angry all the time, which, to be honest, is something that a lot of us as operators have felt, like, I'm just really angry. I don't know why.
Right.
It could be that you're battling some depression issues, and that's not bad, right? Like, just addressing it is enough to make it go away. The anxiety, the lack of control, all that stuff. These are things that you're going to start experiencing as you move into a super high stress career field. Managing them, dismissing them before they turn into this mountain is going to only make you a better guy, a better performer.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of young guys, that are following SOFLETE's programming. They're like, oh, you guys are old. You have time. you got time to do that, you know? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know, man. I just did a pretty busy deployment in Iraq, and I made sure that I had 20 minutes a day to go sit on the roof with my Bose headphones and meditate. Like, it really helped me not go crazy in what was a reasonably stressful period of time in my life. And I think that anyone who says I don't have 20 minutes a day is a liar. Like,
Right.
you're not prioritizing those 20 minutes. You're not prioritizing yourself. And by proxy, you're not prioritizing your performance. So, I mean, 3 hours a day in the gym is great. I personally think it's too much.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're beating yourself up. But also, like, think about that 3-hour block of time as a time to address recovery, mental health, and you're going to see your performance in work-related tasks and physical fitness go way up.
And mental.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mental, your work, productivity is so much better too. Clarity, all of that. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. We've kind of pushed through the to and through now. Let's talk about SOFLETE. Just
we are
what is SOFLETE?
That's an
Explain.
excellent question.
Yeah.
So SOFLETE stands for Special Operations Forces Athlete. We are a tactical fitness company. Bum, bum, bum.
There you go.
We actually, everyone at this company learned a lot from you, in the course of what we've done. Most of the coaches at the company have a background from like OPEX or, a variety of other human performance companies, Exos.
Sure. Yeah.
We have a couple CSCSs floating around. We have incorporated a lot from a lot of different fitness experts in a lot of different domains.
That's the great way to do it too, because I think a lot of people screw up when they're planning fitness and it's just too singularly focused.
Well, and
you know what I mean? And
I don't mean
technical
to.
fitness can't be that way. Yeah.
This comment is not directed at you directly, but it is directed at the fitness industry in the sense that one thing that I think we've done differently that I really like is that most fitness brands are built around one person's fitness ideology.
Right.
And even if that person is open-minded and is incorporating a lot of different aspects of fitness, it's still their personal view. And that is one person's mind, right? We have 7 guys who are very well-educated coaches, and we will fight like stepbrothers over different exercise ideology. So when we have a new program come out, one guy wrote it, but 6 other dudes looked at it and they balled it up and they wiped their asses with it. And they're like, this was terrible. You did this wrong and this wrong. And guys will literally, sometimes it feels like guys are going to come to blows over how we're structuring our training programs, which I think has created a very interesting product that I think it is of the mind of a group and not groupthink. That there's a lot of criticism that goes on as we build programs, and we're continuing to develop new programs. So the coaches that are writing them are having to do, they're continually developing their mindset on how the programming goes. So while we have programs that are dedicated to guys that are trying to get selected, we also spend a majority of our time focusing on generalists. So tactical athletes to us are generalists. So we have 2 primary teams. This is our original and continuing focus is a strength team and a stamina team. Those focuses are not mutually exclusive, as most people think. Well, I'll work on a strength cycle and I'll get super bulked, and then I'll do a stamina cycle and I'll lean out.
Right.
Everything we do is strength biased. So our stamina team, while the primary training is built around developing your motor and energy systems, we are still maintaining a solid base of lifting in that program.
Right.
Our strength team is very predominantly geared towards building power and strength, but also has a baseline of aerobic and conditioning, like fitness related things that, every strength program I've ever done in its entirety has resulted in me running faster 5-mile times. Nice. When I was in Iraq, I did a very strength-focused 12-week cycle, and my runs dropped to sub 6-minute miles for the first time in probably 6 years.
Nice.
It was because I was bored and
Yeah.
I had the time and I was doing the stamina blocks. I wasn't just doing the strength stuff and being like, oh, the running, it
Yeah.
can wait
Skip
till I get
skip
the
the
stamina
running. Yeah.
session. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think I took a bunch of reservists that were there and I put them on the same program that I was on. The running that we were doing was 1 day a week of 400 intervals, 1 day a week of 800 intervals, and one capacity-ish day, which was really more of an active recovery day. It wasn't a race pace day.
Right.
And I took 20 reservists who were failing their PT test and took them to the top of their unit in 6
Nice.
weeks, just because we weren't hammering them to go in and run on the treadmill for an hour or be on an elliptical, things that don't help you get better. You
Right.
know,
Right.
like when you have to run 6 800 or say 4 400s or 6 400s and 4 800s, something like that, 2 separate days. If you can't run 6 400s, you suddenly realize you have a problem.
Yeah.
So we're scaling it, for them to begin with for the first 3 weeks. They are taking a deload. And then when they come back, they're like, oh man, I ran all my 400s this time. And you're like, yeah, bro.
Nice.
And now you're going to run all your 800s because it's just going to feel easier. And then when it comes time for you to run 2 miles, you just ran 3 miles of 800s and you killed it. Now your 2 miler just seems easy, right?
Yep.
It's,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's not even an issue. But we only ran 3 days a week and we didn't
That's
even,
nice.
yeah. So I think that like our big focus at SOFLETE has been increasing longevity and performance. So like durability to us is probably one of the most important aspects of a first responder or a soldier that's trying to become more fit. We never know what the demands are going to be. We're not peaking for an individual event. We're peaking for a an extended period of time. So like during a deployment, even if it's only a 6-month or a 3-month special operations deployment, I have to be ready to put out 100% at any given time on a moment's notice. I don't know when that is. It's hard to say. I mean, I could go on 15 missions where I'm not really required to do anything. My adrenaline may be up. I may be worried that something's going to happen. But I mean, I could literally just go and kick in, the door, 15 different houses. I could clear the house, flex cuff people in an eventless raid, do my thing, and be gone. And then the 16th time, like all of a sudden, I've got, injuries on target. I've got to move. I have to do a lateral. I have to like carry bodies and equipment. I have to do a lot of very stressful things. We don't know when that's going to be. We can't pinpoint it. So we have to train to be ready at any given point, which means we have to be injury free.
Yeah.
And I think that one mistake, we talked about it, is that, guys in this community, guys that are drawn to being police officers, guys that are drawn to being EMTs, guys that are drawn to being special operations or soldiers, whatever, they want to be the best. They see someone lifting more than them and they want to lift as much as that guy. They see someone running faster than them and they want to run as fast as that guy. They don't understand that like getting to that point, the razor's edge, it's when you sharpen a knife too much, the blade rolls easily, right?
Yeah.
So maintaining a good, consistent edge on your blade means that your blade is more useful. The last thing you need is to create this razor sharp edge that the first time you go to use your knife rolls and now you don't have a useful blade at all. So, being able to perform at 80% of your capacity or even 90% of your capacity for an extended period of time without injury is much better than being able to perform at 100% for a brief period of time and being better than everyone else. If that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Absolutely. And it goes back to, what I call the 3 phases of tactical fitness, getting to the training, getting through the training, and then your career, of training. And, that longevity in your career matters. You are going to be older longer than you are younger in your career, right? And you have to start taking care of yourself. And if all you really know is what you learned in the first 2 phases, right? You're going to beat yourself up to a point where you break during your career. You definitely have to change things up during your career.
It's funny because I think that fitness in the first phase that you outline is very specifically determination.
Yeah.
You made up your mind you're going to do something. You're not very good at it.
highly motivated.
Yep. And you have to build up a quick base. You have to perform to a certain level so that you don't fall behind. The second phase is, in my mind, almost entirely luck. Like selection.
There's a lot of luck in selection. Yes.
I know a lot of really, really, really good guys, way better than myself, that didn't make it through selection simply because of an injury or an accident or pushing too hard to impress the evaluators, or alternately saying one wrong thing in front of the wrong evaluator and having it be held against them. You know, I mean, we call it cadre roulette. There's a reason, you know, it's like, you got a real dickhead. I got a guy who was very open-minded and wanted to teach him, help you learn. I guess.
Yeah. There's a lot of subjectivity to those courses that can
we pretend they're very objective and professional, and as much as is humanly possible, they are.
Yes.
But also, it's my buddy Worth Parker refers to it as the smells like fish phenomenon, where it's like, well, this guy is a good performer or whatever, but what's something's wrong with him. You guys don't like him. No, I mean, he smells like fish, man. You're like, does he? Like, yeah, he stinks. Smells like fish. Yeah. Okay, well, we're not going to pick him then. I don't know why. Like, I didn't realize that smelling like fish was something that would get you kicked out, but I mean, apparently it does. So, like, once you get past sheer determination and being lucky, those are not enough to maintain you for 20 years or 10 years. If you want to perform consistently, you have to develop a better method. You have to have a system. You have to be consistently getting better without hurting yourself. And I think following a well-designed program is important. I think that understanding, not just listening to your mental health internally, but your physical health. Like if you wake up in the morning and you feel tired, the answer to that is not a 3-hour gym workout. Right. I think that a lot of us are masochists in that realm, where it's like, hey, everything in my life is wrong right now. I'm stressed. I'm tired. I don't feel very good. You know what'll get me out of a funk? I'll go for a 10-mile run, or I'll go spend 2 hours in the gym, and it'll make me feel better.
Because that's all you know. I mean, that's all you know is like, I know that if I skip this workout, I will feel worse than if I did it.
But
you know what I mean? But
and that's true. But that's when you're ripe for injury. That's when you're ripe for low performance, which is going to make you feel worse about yourself. So that's why guys need to start implementing. I actively seek recovery days.
Amen.
I'm like,
use that phrase all the time.
I don't feel good. Today is going to be a day that I treat myself. Like I might do something. I might free spin on the bike for an hour while I cruise the news on my phone. But I'm like, generally my recovery days are like massage oriented, or an easy swim, or a bike, or a scenic trail run at a pace that feels like really
fun.
Bad.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, 13-minute miles. This was terrible.
My favorite thing that I've been doing, especially since after 40, and I started doing it after 40. I started writing about it about 45 because it made a world of difference for me, is instead of busting ass 6 days a week, right, in workouts, just take that middle one right out of it. And I turn Thursday into what I call mobility day now. Sometimes it's Wednesday. Sometimes it's Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes it's Tuesday and Thursday. Just depends on my week and how I'm feeling. And my mobility day works like this. I do a 5-minute bike or elliptical, and I do a 5-minute stretch or foam roller, and I do that 5 times. And that has been unbelievably helpful for me. And then I go to the pool. I swim for 10 minutes. I tread water for 10 minutes. And then I do all the dynamic stretches that I can think of in chest deep water.
Nice.
And I walk out of there just feeling no pain. And
it's really weird.
So nice.
Because we're all so competitive. Like,
my recovery is better than your recovery.
no. I don't even mean like that. I mean,
No, I'm just joking.
getting to the point where you make the decision to do those kind of days is a real challenge. I mean, I think
It
it's
is.
hilarious that you had to do it at 40,
It
right?
took me to 40. Took
Yeah,
me to
like
40. Yeah.
I sit here. Something that our head coach George really shoved down my throat, which I initially didn't like, but I now believe to be very true from my own anecdotal experience. I hated cardio so much that when I did cardio, I was convinced that I wanted to get the biggest bang for my buck out of it. So I was going to destroy myself. You know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
I wasn't running at race pace, I was mad at myself. If I wasn't spiking my heart rate over 200, I was mad at myself. I was like, look, I am going to get every ounce of benefit out of this because I hate it and I only want to do it a couple times a week. And I felt like, not in runs, but more specifically on my bike rides, I had kind of hit a wall where, I mean, I'm too heavy for a bike anyway. Like, I learned that a long time ago. Like, I really enjoy riding a road bike. Every time I ride with road bikers, it is a constant reminder that I am 50 pounds too heavy to be on a road bike.
Yeah, those guys are all leg weight. That's it.
They are tiny dudes.
Yeah.
And when we hit hills, and I'm like, I'm really feeling like I'm keeping up with them until we hit a hill, and then they're just like gone, and I'm like, oh, I can't keep up. But I definitely felt like I wasn't gaining anything on my rides. I was spending a significant amount of time on a bike and just kind of stagnating. And it was more my motor than my max power output. So I knew there was an issue there. And George told me, he's like, look, man, like, you're maxing out your CNS on every one of your cardio things. Your central nervous system is fried.
Yep.
You do it when you lift weights. Now you're doing it when you do cardio, and you're not allowing your body to reset at all. Think about a reset period. Like, take the next 3 weeks, and I want your average heart rate to be below 140, and I don't want you to go over 165 on any of your cardio efforts. And that is a really hard thing to do. You know, like,
It is. It is.
but
Hard.
even when we were doing active recovery, I was way higher than that before. And when I made the conscious choice to do low output days like that, my maximum output days started to really get easier and better. I felt healthier. And I think that we do a poor job of explaining that to our athletes or candidates that, you know, sometimes when your body is maxed out, like, it doesn't help you to keep maxing it out. You need to do a reset.
Yeah. In fact, like I said, it took me to 40 to really kind of figure it out. But now all of my students are getting it.
Are they? I mean, that's
Even though
good.
they're 20 years old,
Yeah.
I'm making them do it. In fact, we even started doing a yoga class on Thursday
Yoga changed my life, man.
for
Like,
45-minute yoga class.
what do you use to guide that? Do you have somebody or?
Yeah, we have a lady that comes in and knows yoga. I don't know anything that she's talking about.
Should you like
I have to watch her.
Is it like a vinyasa flow, like pretty quick position changes?
Yep.
That stuff is awesome.
She used those words.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife was really into it, and I started doing it, and I wish I did more of it. It's a time commitment.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's a 90-minute thing if you
Yeah.
you really want to do it.
Yeah, we're not in the 90-minute zone yet. We're hitting about 45, 60, but
which is still good.
Yeah, it's sufficient.
Significant commitment.
And then we go swim. So it's kind of an easy day for us, and it's everybody's happy with it. So
you guys, it's like working with a MARSOC former recon guy. I constantly get all this pool talk, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm in the pool every other month. I'm like, oh man, I'm still bad at this. I want to do that triathlon, the picnic tri that's up in Montana. It's basically from Jackson Hole. You ride a bike from Jackson Hole to Jenny Lake, and then you swim Jenny Lake, and then you climb the Grand Teton, and you come back down, swim back across the lake, and then ride your bike back into Jackson Hole.
Holy mackerel.
It's a very scenic triathlon, right?
I would bet.
Also non-competitive. It's just a bunch of people that
just doing a workout.
Yeah, as a recreation. And every time I try to do open water swims, I'm reminded, I'm like, I can climb that mountain, I can ride the bike. I am pretty sure they will find my frozen body at the bottom of Jenny Lake if I go out there and swim a mile across the lake and a mile back. But, side stroke's a powerful thing as long
Side
as you can
stroke will
keep
work.
breathing.
Side stroke will work. That's funny.
Yeah, so we sell the programming, and we do a lot of digital content. I think our biggest strength has been that we've engaged a previously unreachable market. I think that the command at the Special Operations Command they've always done well at dictating things to 20 to 35-year-old males, like telling them, hey, this is what you should expect. Like they make declarative statements, but it's not in a voice that really resonates with guys. The only thing that draws guys into SOF is aspiration. They want to be like someone that they don't really know. And you always say, don't get to know your heroes, right? Because when you do, you realize they're just another guy. I think my personal opinion is, after 14 years in the special operations community, we are all flawed heroes, but I also don't think that you are going to be, unless you marry one of us, you will not be disappointed with us when you get to know us, right? But we do a very poor job of telegraphing that to potential candidates and to guys in the regiments, guys actually in NSW, guys actually in USASOC. They don't get that message from command. I think that they feel micromanaged, and that there's a lot of criticism of their actions. So we have just kind of kept a bro operator voice, but tried to stay professional and focused. I think we've been reasonably successful. Every day I wake up and I expect there to be some negative pushback from command about what I'm doing. And every time when I come into work and I do Army stuff, everybody is like, all the way up to 3-star generals, like, I really like what you guys are doing over there
Nice.
at SOFLETE. Yeah, it's been positive. I get snarky comments about range days and Hawaiian shirts, but I have not received any official correspondence banning me from doing so. So I view that as a victory. And I think that the big thing is that because we're contracted by NSW, because we're contracted by SOCOM units to provide programming, but we're not part of that community, like as far as a company, we have a lot more freedom to push at the edges and try things, which I think is helpful. Even if we can't officially endorse certain things for guys, we can talk about it. I know that things that we could never talk about at USASOC, like testosterone replacement therapy, or the use of cannabidiols, like CBDs.
Sure.
We can do that as a company because we have guys that can, be like, hey man, I went to a doctor. I am doing these things legally. These are the results I'm seeing. These are a bunch of studies to substantiate how I feel about them. And let guys make an informed decision.
I think that's great.
Yeah, I think we're on a good path.
Right. I try to do the same thing. I try to do the same thing with make their own decisions through articles I write for military.com. I've done a lot on CBDs. Haven't done any on like testosterone updates, but I'm thinking about it because that's
I think
that
we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Because not now, maybe at a later date. Sure. I really want to introduce you to the guys at Task Force Dagger who are doing a functional medicine approach to treating guys with exposures. Is another topic for another day, but I think that any first responders, military guys, girls, whatever, the level of exposures that we see career-wise are very damaging to us, athletically, mentally, spiritually. It's
hormonally.
Yeah. And I'm not prepared to admit I was suicidal in 2014 because I don't think I was, but I had a lot of thoughts that I couldn't address. And after going to the Cleveland Clinic and getting my heavy metals done, I am a firm believer that I was well on my way to some form of Mad Hatter's disease, just because my heavy metals, my lead levels, my mercury levels were so high.
Crazy.
Exposure to firearms, guns, just being in Iraq where they burn trash, being in Afghanistan where they burn trash, Africa, addressing those things has dramatically changed my hormone profile, the way I feel. And these are things that the conventional medicine just isn't really addressing. And so, encouraging people to do their own self-care, I think is really important as well, as far as like, hey, if you used to be a really fit person and now you suddenly feel like every day is under a cloud and you don't understand why you're not motivated to do these things, it may not be because you're lazy. Like you may have a legitimate physical problem that you should be checking on. Yeah. And that's kind of where TRT fits in that a lot of guys, when you have high metal contents, your body's endocrine system is shutting down because it sees like lead, for example, is viewed as a calcium overage. So if your body's producing too much calcium, it stops producing vitamin D no matter how much sun you get. Right. When you stop producing vitamin D, your body immediately is like, you don't need testosterone either, bro. Yeah. So it just shuts it down. And then you're like, man, I don't know why I'm holding fat. I don't know why I'm like kind of depressed. And then you start to unravel the problem. And you're like, well, it takes me 2 years to get rid of a lot of this heavy metals in my system, like 2 years of better living and concerted effort. But what do I do in those 2 years? Well, if you take, tiny amounts of testosterone and supplement your levels, it's titration is what my doctor called it. Yep. To a good and natural hormone level, like night and day. I'm just totally different.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I think that it's something that a lot of doctors are starting to look at as normal outside the military community. And I think that it's, the military owes it to themselves to start talking about these things just, for what's the best interest of their assets. We spend millions of dollars developing guys, and then it's almost as though we feel like they're disposable. And I would love it if we stopped doing that.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, if you're feeling anywhere like Doug just said, get yourself a screening test. Just go in and ask, say, hey, what are my hormonal levels? Where am I? Just
especially as a male. At any age, if you say, I'm feeling lethargic, I have a low sex drive, I feel like I've been fatter than usual.
Yeah.
Basically everything that your wife would say when she is like not interested in having sex with you. Like if you feel that way, then ask for your testosterone levels to get checked. And the thing is, if they're low, there's a reason for that. It's not like a 32-year-old male has low testosterone for no reason.
Right.
It's not atypical, right? There's a reason behind it. And then you can start unraveling those things. And there's a lot of foundations out there that are exploring functional medicine as far as how to deal with these things. I think if your test is low, it's a really good indicator to start taking stress hormone tests, food allergy tests, looking into like gut health, things like that. Yep. Once you start to explore that, you can start to get a much better idea of why your testosterone's low.
Yeah.
So.
Well, a lot of it's, just the lifestyle itself is, no matter what, job in the tactical profession, you're probably going to have some stress levels that are regular, that are above normal.
You could say
you're
that.
Probably going to have sleep that is abnormal, at best, maybe even days without sleep. All of those things, along with, crappy food, depending on where you are, the air around you, where you are, all those things come into play. And, you might be 35, fully operational, but, there are some underlying issues that you can catch up on long before they become chronic.
I am way better off than a lot of my peers that are in the same boat. Like I caught it very early. Yeah. To be honest, I thought that it was going to be a free ticket for me to get doctor-approved steroids.
Right.
So I was like, man, I just don't feel that good. I'm going to go get checked. But, I'm fine. Yeah. And then when my testosterone levels were like double digit, they were like below those of an 80-year-old man.
Same. Yeah.
I was like, holy cow, man. Like, what's wrong with me? which caused me to panic, do medical research and talk to people and be like, man, I really should be responsible for my own care. Like
Yeah.
what's wrong with me?
Yeah. It's a
So
really good discussion because we've never gone down this rabbit hole, and the journey, to, through, and after for you has been a unique one, and you're still doing great things, and you still can do great things, but along the journey you have to address some of the things the tactical professions see and get exposure to, and all of that, and knowing how to deal with that is something that is available, to most people. I mean, there's everything from resiliency programs to, um, actively pursuing recovery. That alone is a huge difference.
it's the 21st century, right? Um, when we were coming up, it was
Yeah.
expected. I mean, you grew up in the post red cell, like the Jesse Ventura age of SEALs, and I grew up in the post Vietnam 80s FID like Cold War SF environment, and like the expectation from our predecessors was that this career field was going to give you a divorce or three, and it was all that bitch's fault. Like literally, like every old guy you meet, well, my first wife and my second wife and my third wife, and they were all terrible. They all went crazy, and you're like, I wonder what the unifying factor here is. And like alcoholism was an expected thing. It's a heavy culture of drinking, which is another form of self-medication to mask depression and exposures. Guys expected to get fat and broken. Hey, by the time I retire, I'm going to be useless to the regiment. And I don't think that that's true. We're in the 21st century now. I mean, you just turned 50 and you're still, I believe you're actively pursuing the fittest life possible.
I like to think I am.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's funny that I'm almost 40 and I outperform a lot of the 20-something-year-old guys that are on our programs.
Same.
I feel in better shape now than I've ever felt in my entire life. And I don't think, like, if I get a divorce, it's because of bad personal choices I made. And I have to recognize that. I also think that it is not because my wife went crazy. It's because I've been gone 75% of our marriage. And those are things you can't really deal with, but you can talk through those things, right?
Yeah.
You can deal with them. And I think we have all those things in place. I think that sometimes they've been stigmatized as like, because we're strong people, we shouldn't need them. But I think that to stay strong, it's important that we do those things. And, between, like you said, talk therapy and hormone replacement and, just going to a doctor.
Get your checkups.
How many dudes do we know that pride themselves on how thin their medical jacket is?
Right.
Until they're 50 and they're trying to retire, or 40, whatever. And they're like, man, I don't know why the VA, like, I've done all these things.
I got 0%.
0% disability. Like, yeah, because you never went to the doctor, man. Like, I get it. Like, you don't have to milk it. But at the same time, like, you will be in a much better place to be happy upon retirement if you're taking care of yourself. Right. And you won't find yourself in this place. Like, I talk to guys all the time here at SOFLETE. We get a lot of email traffic and Facebook messages, and it's guys that are in their like late 20s, early 30s, and they're really broken.
Yeah.
Really broken. And they're talking about med boards and stuff. And I'm like, man, you guys adhered to the stronger, not smarter school of thought in a lot of ways. And that is now coming to bite you in the ass. And the only option you have is to take care of yourself administratively. Try to get all the medical care you can get, deal with the damage that's been done, but you can't keep pushing. Like, you can't keep trying to run a 100-mile race.
No.
You can't keep trying to be a world record lifter.
Yep.
Like, you have 17 broken bones. You're missing your spleen. Like, you did not take care of yourself. Now, the piper is going to get paid.
Yeah. Like you said, actively pursuing recovery has to be one of those things that get you up out of bed, excited to go to the gym when you don't feel like going to the gym.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because that's when I do it. Like when I'm like, ugh, I'm going to do a recovery day. and I get up and go. This is going to be fun.
They're huge reliefs. I know, like,
Yeah.
in my training these days, like, I used to hate cardio days. I hate work capacity days now,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
15-minute grinders.
Yeah. They're tough.
But I look forward to my capacity day where it's like, hey, today just go ride your bike for, an hour and 20 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, man, this is going to be a good day. Like, I'm just going to get out there, get a sweat on, breathe a little bit, keep my
Breathe
heart rate
deep.
to 160, like, it's a good day.
Yeah, we are so sympathetically charged, with our nervous system, and if we can
Oh,
do
we are.
anything that we can possibly do to engage that parasympathetic side of our nervous system, do it, because otherwise we're way out of balance, and everything starts falling apart real quick.
It does, man, for sure. So I am glad. Like, I think the best thing that having this soapbox does for us is we get to talk about that daily with
Yeah.
people, where it's like, you don't think this is important. I know you think, from what you see when you watched, Act of Valor or whatever movie.
YouTube.
Yeah. Like,
YouTube dudes lifting
but when you see
big
operators,
hulky
like, you don't
dudes.
think that an operator is doing these things. But I am here to assure you, if we want to stay in this game for a long time, we're going to do these things. And the dudes that aren't doing these things are the guys that are, like, they're popping hot for meth, or they're stealing op fund. Like, they're making bad decisions
Yeah.
downrange because they're not capable of making good decisions. They've
Yeah.
maxed out their good decision matrix. It's like,
Yeah.
man, this seems like a good idea. Said no one but you.
Right.
Also, like,
You're exactly right. That is just reckless behavior. That is also, some signs of depression,
a,
PTS
a
issues, and
maxed
things like
out
that.
sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, hey, man, I am engaging in risk-taking behaviors because they seem normal to me, because I'm just like, I'm so far off the spectrum
Yes. I
that
need
it's like,
more adrenaline.
yep.
Yeah.
So guys need to take care of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's end it on that. I think we've eaten up some people's time,
For
but
sure.
this has been a really good to, through, and after. I didn't expect it to go down this journeys, but I'm really glad we did. I'm glad we met in 1996.
Man, it has been a road.
It's been quite a road for you, especially.
Oh, for you, man. I literally, I cannot run into anyone who's ever been at the Naval Academy that does not remember you. You are a human par excellence.
I love that place. I really do. It is. I live right outside of it, so I got to go back often.
It is a scenic area.
I love it. Yeah, but I appreciate what you do, what you still do now, what you're doing with SOFLETE. I think SOFLETE is a um, great course, and if you haven't seen it, you got to go to SOFLETE.com. Check it out. All right, I think we might have lost him, but we are done anyway. So hey, thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Stu Smith with the To, Through, and After series.